Everyone, this is Marja bin Balaj from Pakistan, and you're watching my YouTube channel Insani Ittihad, which aims to invoke a little bit of humanity in all of us through awareness and understanding. So I had, because these were the first 9 days of the month of Av, the Jewish month of Av, and these are very not actually holy, but mourners' days. We mourn the destruction of the first and the second temple on 9th of Av. In between there was Shabbat, and therefore I was not using any electronics, and I was not updated in regards to the operation against Islamic Jihad in Gaza by the IDF, and the whole thing. So after Tish B'Av, which was yesterday, the 9 days of the Jewish month of Av were over. After fasting for the Tish B'Av yesterday, today I had the opportunity to go through and get some updates, and I got to know regarding this operation. The IDF actually claims that they have it was a targeted operation against the Islamic Jihad, and it was somewhat a preemptive strike, but that there were 300 or something rockets fired towards Israel, and there were some casualties of children and civilians in Gaza, largely. The death toll, last I checked, I'm not updated, so please pardon me if the number is exaggerated or less. The casualty totaled to 44 lives, and I don't know if it includes the terrorists which were targeted by the IDF or just that. So IDF actually claimed that there were 300 plus rockets fired towards Israel, and most of them actually didn't reach the airspace of Israel, rather dropped inside Gaza, killing the civilians. And IDF itself was specifically targeting civilians of Islamic Jihad, and one could say that, okay, fine, these terrorists were hiding in buildings where there were civilians living, just like in the case of when the US used to do drone strikes, the NATO used to do operations, the Taliban used to hide amongst the civilian population of the Afghani people of Afghanistan, basically. So there were civilian casualties from those drone attacks, because these terrorists, these Taliban, Al-Qaeda members, were actually hosted by these civilian warlords and their families. So obviously, one thing I would like to mention, the timing of it was Muharram, and there was this news about this guy who was taking his, I think, a toddler, and saying, why would you kill this toddler? And it was, for me, people who are listening to my video probably call me that I'm a ruthless person, but this is a fact, and somebody has to say it. If Ananya Naftali is not saying, anyone else is not saying, I think I find it my duty to put forth this truth and say these harsh words, so I apologize beforehand. So this drama that Palestinian people do, when the operation is going on, all these Palestinians from Gaza and West Bank and all over the world, children are dying, women are dying, this is happening, this is a cruel army, Yazidi army, we are the victims, just like Hussein, Imam Hussein, blah, blah, blah. They use Imam Hussein, they use Shia sentiment, Shia religious sentiment to provoke Iran and to get sympathy, and make that analogy, despite the fact that they are hardcore Sunni Muslims. And this is just very, very below dignity and unethical way of going about things. And I am pretty sure that these Sunni jihadists probably killed their own Muslim people. Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, major leaders, even the recently assassinated and killed head of Al-Qaeda, Al-Zawahiri, Ayman Al-Zawahiri, whatever the hell his name is. So this guy openly, and by the way, he was a dentist, educated. So was Osama bin Laden. He was I think engineer, civil engineer or something. He was an engineer. So educated people. They said that even if you have to kill a bunch of Muslims to get your target done, and your target is the U.S. and Israel and the Zionist, whole thing, the Zionist people who believe in the existence and sovereignty of the Jewish state, if you need to make sure that your target, which is the U.S. and Israel and the Zionist ideology, going and achieving targets in regards to that, towards that, if you have to kill a bunch of Muslims, go ahead and do that. Osama bin Laden actually said in jihad for destroying Israel and America, you can even kill Muslims. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is a living example. In an army public school, in I think 2016, in army public school, they burned alive a teacher who was a Sunni Muslim teacher in front of Sunni Muslim army background children. They murdered children inside the schools, and they said that because Pakistani army is giving support to the US forces and NATO forces in the war against terror, that's why we are obliged to target our own Muslims who are in line or are facilitating the Americans or the Israelis or this anti-Muslim agenda. So they would not hesitate killing their own people just to promote their cause or their Islamically radical ideology. So I do believe that IDF did not target the civilian population and kill those Muslim, Sunni, Gazan children and women, but it is rather the Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and all those radical Muslim groups who are in power and have taken hostage all the Sunni population in Gaza, and these people are suffering in the hands of these terrorists. And giving sovereignty to the Palestinian people in Gaza is a great example to not give the sovereignty to the people in West Bank and in Jerusalem, because these people, if they have authority and state, they would hostage the civilian people, and radical Islamic ideology would spread across, and they would produce only terrorism and terrorist people who not only a threat to Israel and US and the West, but also a threat to the Muslims, the peaceful Muslims themselves. So if the IDF claims that the Gaza, the rockets that fired from Islamic Jihad and Hamas towards Israel were actually dropped on Gazan people, I totally believe that, because Israelis, you see, they're very clear. If I as a person love my children and I will not radicalize them, I will not give them Kalashnikovs and put Lilas this and make them terrorists and say go kill the Zionists and Americans and Westerners and non-Muslims and whatever, and in the pursuit of going about killing these people, if you die you become a martyr and you get 72 virgins or whatever the hell that is. So if I love my children, if I would protect my children as a Jew, as an Israeli, as a Zionist, so definitely I would have value for other people's children too. But the point is, the Gazans, the Islamic Jihad, the Hamas, the PA, the Palestinian fake propagandist ideology promotes their children to have hatred towards Americans, towards non-Muslims, towards, and especially towards Zionists and Jews. So if they inculcate that hatred to that point that they are willing to say to their children, kill these Zionists and Jews and non-Muslims and Americans, even if in the process of killing them you die. So they will have no value whatsoever for their own children. So if they don't love their own children, they would definitely not have any value for the Jewish children. Another example, after the Peshawar example, where children were targeted, women teachers were burned alive and killed, and that was in Pakistan, and that was Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan killing. And Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is a Sunni radicalized terrorist organization killing Sunni Muslims in Peshawar, Sunni teachers, Sunni female teachers, and Sunni children. So I have no doubt that Hamas, Islamic Jihad have killed with their rockets, which don't exactly work, and actually Iron Dome, which protects Israeli, Israeli airspace and Israeli geographically controlled areas. It targets that, and those failed rockets, they deliberately, I would not be surprised if I would come to know that Islamic Jihad actually specifically target their own population, civilian population, or gather bunch of children and families and tell them that stay in this shelter because bombs are coming from Israel. But in fact they themselves gather these women and children and target them with their own rockets, and then put the blame to Israel just to get sympathy, because their target is to evilify and illegitimize the state of Israel and evilify the Jewish people, especially in holy months like Ramadan or Muharram, when the religious sentiments is already there. That father taking around his dead son was a planned, scripted drama, that his son dies, his wife dies, everyone dies, and he's alive, just to propagate this drama to the whole world, that look, they have killed my small little child, just like they killed Ali Asghar, the son of Hussein, which was killed by Yazid, who was again a Sunni Muslim. So this sort of propaganda is part and parcel of the Islamic radical ideology to achieve the political and geographic land and material benefits and power towards the non-Muslims, and especially against the Jewish people and the Zionist people, who only demand a sovereignty over their ancestral land, which they have a full right of. So I believe that it was not IDF's intention to target the civilian population, but rather it was Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Also, I would like to tell the world and everyone, imagine this: Sunni Muslims, for power, control, and prestige or resource accumulation, they brutally murdered the family of grandson of the Prophet. They didn't even spared the grandson of the Prophet, their own Prophet, who was an Arab Sunni, one of their own basically. So they didn't spare the family of the Prophet's grandson. They killed all the Ahl al-Bayt, the family of the Prophet, from his only daughter Fatima. They brutally murdered all the men. They enslaved, humiliated, imprisoned, and killed also young children. Ali Asghar was just in his not even a toddler. He was like about 6 or 7 months, a year old, I think, not more than that. He was killed with an arrow, with a bow and arrow. And Sakina, who was actually a toddler, 3-4-year-old daughter of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, she was enslaved. She was taken captive. She was as a child she was tortured by these Sunni Muslims, these Yazidis, and now these Sunni Muslims clearly shove off their sins by saying, oh, he was a kafir, he was not actually a Muslim, he was a Muslim. He said that there is an Islamic interpretation that I have, the Islamic way of going about things, which I believe, and that is right, and Imam Hussein and his family members' opinions don't matter. I am the caliph, I have the power over Kufa and the rest of the part of Iraq, and nobody can take that power away from me, and whatever I would say would become part of the Hadith and part of the Quran and part of the Islam that we are propagating. What they have done, what this Islamic caliphate has done, it is written in the history what they have done, and what they have done to the family of the Prophet, the grandson of the Prophet, should be the testament that these radical Sunnis, or even any radical from any sect of the Islam, this radical Islamic ideology will not spare anyone, especially the people who are not non-Muslims. They shouldn't expect any peace or any righteousness or any mercy from these radical groups, and I openly say it, I have said it again, and I would reiterate and say it again. American forces before leaving Afghanistan should have at least dropped 6-7 nuclear bombs into the stronghold provinces and cities where Taliban were were hiding, or there were doubts that they are hiding in those places. Clearly nuke them. Nobody wants Afghanistan. Who wants Afghanistan? Even Afghanis don't want Afghanistan. People were going like zombies towards those people who were exiting from the Kabul airport. Everyone has seen that. And please don't, Hijabin Baloch, this hijabi girl has said drop nuclear, but don't be touchy-wutchy and all those, this crazy socialist drama. Cut it out, this human rights, all the human rights come and apply it to people who do this drama and actually are radicalized terrorist people. And when it comes to talking about human rights, where are the human rights where Jewish, the holiest place of the Jew was destroyed? Where is the human rights in there? They're not even allowed to go and see and pray on the ruins of Temple Mount. I mean, they don't have the right, their basic right to have sovereignty over a land which they were promised actually by the British, by the world, that they would create a Jewish state, a sovereign Jewish state for the Jewish people because of their suffering in Europe and around the world. The human rights promoters and all that, they are all silent when it comes to that. So, all the human rights are for the terrorists, not for humans actually. So, of that drama, Japan suffered nearly 75, 85 years ago, suffered from, Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear attacks by the US. Look at how that country has come out of that whole thing. Those radical Kawasaki suicide bombers and all that. Look at Japan now. It's the most peaceful, most technologically advanced, most amazing country, one of the most developed countries. It's aligned with the US. It's the most secure country also. So educated people, nice people. Look at the shape of Japan now after dropping off those 2 nuclear bombs. They have become better people. They have come out better. Who knows if after 5, 6, 7 nuclear bombs, Afghanistan would have come out very, decent people and actually very decent human beings rather than killing monsters and terrorists. So think about it, and before you giving all your sympathies to, these drama queen Palestinians, do a little background check and see how these terrorist organizations work. The UN and everyone has declared these organizations, Islamic Brotherhood, Islamic Jihad, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban Pakistan or Taliban Afghanistan, whatever, these are all terrorist organizations. They will not spare killing non-Muslims, children and women if they do not hesitate killing their own Muslim women and children. They use women and children to achieve their material, political, and all this financial gains. Don't get messed up and tricked by these terrorists and support the right side. IDF is very, very right combating these terrorists, and they should do more and more severe operations against Hamas and Islamic Jihad and all the terrorist organizations if they exist in Gaza. Even Gaza should be nuked. Yeah, I have no doubt saying that. And if there are peaceful civilian people, they should immediately leave Gaza, because that is a shithole. Just like Jews were running to save their lives, save their children, save their women, save their lives. They left their belongings, their carriers, their whatever. They left everything, and they just wanted to save their lives. They were going from one country to another. You don't see that happening with Palestinians. They're just stuck there, and they're radicalizing, and still they're underdogs. They have taken the Palestinians actually have taken the Israelis as hostage, where the Israelis are more powerful, yet their hands are tied by the international community. If international community is so they have so much love and care for the Palestinians, why can't they give them their own land? Or why can't they give guarantee to Israel that if a single rocket comes from Gaza, or a single terrorist act comes from the West Bank or the Palestinian controlled areas, the world would strike against the Palestinian Authority, and the world will strike against Gaza if any rocket would come. And they can easily monitor the situation through satellite, and nobody has to be okay, this one is lying, that one is lying. Just check it on the satellite, who is right and wrong. But if Israel is going to be targeted, we should show no mercy to any of the country, let alone Gaza or any Arab country. So the Muslim countries, the Muslim states, these terrorist groups, you better think twice targeting Israel, or even if America has a little bit of respect left, they should also fear for their lives targeting Americans or Israelis. So this is something I wanted to share, and it is such a shame that these people create these drama and then equate it to the massacre of the Prophet's grandson's family. It's such a shameful thing, and it's like a below dignity, below humanity thing. So truth has to be told, and truth has to be told unedited as it is. Don't fuck with the history. And just because somebody has to target another group and have political gains, do not fuck with the history, and do not lie, and do not. Propaganda will never work. I think if you don't understand that, go check the history of Nazis and Romans and Egyptians and whatever. So thank you very much. And by the way, Indians, and it's below my dignity to even talk about the reporting of how the social media influencers from India and the Indian media covered this. It's like I'm so disgusted, and I actually regret now going and living for like 7-8 months in India, just listening to the cramp that they put in, and then they have the audacity to say that they are the best friends of Israel. Unbelievable. I mean, there has to be a limit to hypocrisy. Thank you very much. I hope it helps.